I personally think that Josh Sargent should be the number 9.
My biggest concern is that Mexico does tend to make those little mistakes defensively, but it's the inconsistencies. With the
Isn't this inconsistent though?
He's going to be on the ground for the majority of the time. No,
I
look back at highlights.
That's the Christian Pulisic treatment though.
Same.
We're going to have to stop this. We're going to start arguing on this podcast, aren't we?
Hello, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Real Futbol Show. I'm Lizzy, U.S. editor here at 90 Min, with Geno, Gonnello, my co-host, to talk all things CONCACAF at the World Cup. How are you doing?
Doing well. A little bit better, I think, than last time. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure how I feel right now. Tomorrow's going to be an interesting day. That's all I know. So we'll see.
It'll be a lot.
Tomorrow, I may not exist after tomorrow, so might have to be checked into a psychiatric facility.
Well, that will be interesting. I will be missing you.
It's not gonna be a pleasurable experience unless, of course, for some reason the U.S. wins by a lot of goals.
That'll be interesting. Well, we'll get into that. I think first and foremost, we have to start with Canada. They are the first CONCACAF nation to be officially eliminated, joining Qatar in teams that cannot qualify to the round of 16. They lost against Croatia. First and foremost, what do you think of the game?
Yeah, so I was just telling Edwin, I was able to catch the second half. I watched the first half again today. And really, as we said, I think as a lot of people said, that first 30 minutes ish, even all the way through the first half was okay. It wasn't terrible. Okay. They had, they were applying pressure, obviously get the goal really early in the first minute there or second minute. And it pops off.
Fastest goal of the tournament so far. I believe it was minute and a half.
Yeah. So it was so quick and they get on the front foot and you're like, oh man, this is the same Canada we saw against Belgium. Could this be an upset? Could Canada get a win here? They get their goal. The finishing, obviously a little bit better, 1-for-1 off the bat. But then as the game started to wear on, started to absorb more pressure, started to fall into that shell a little bit, obviously having that 1-goal lead. And then I think they were a victim in the first half, at least, of some unlucky bounces, especially on the second goal. The ball is stopped by the defense. It kind of bounces around, ends up at the foot of the Croatian player, whose name I can't remember right now, and then goes in the back of the net. So, obviously going in the half down 2-1, then you're come out of the half, and it's a whole different game where you need to press, you need to push, and that opens up more spaces, as it did even at 1-1 for Croatia, and then it kind of all fell apart as the second half wore on for Canada. So, you can't fault them for being attack-minded and wanting to go out there and prove something. And they do get their first ever World Cup goal. But it was, again, the naivety of that is also, you need to understand that you're in a World Cup. And if you want to advance, sometimes the best option is to be compact defensively and hope you hit them on the counter. So.
Yeah, I think honestly, they were robbed of that first game against Belgium. That's where they needed a result. I think going into it against Croatia was never going to be easy. But I think John Herdman made one of the biggest mistakes he could in saying that they were going to F Croatia and going into that. A mistake Croatia made in 2014, actually, against Mexico. A couple players dissed Guillermo Ochoa, and I believe it was Modric, and the head coach at the time said Mexico's legs were shaking, to which then Mexico responded with a 3-1. So they've been victims of that PR push before a game. They have since learned and now respect every opponent before each game. Canada did not do that. I think that was a huge error because you give yourself a huge target on your back for Croatia to come in motivated, even more than they were previously.
No bulletin board material. You don't want bulletin board material.
No, you don't want that one phrase that the other team will use against you. A team that was also superior. I think if you're coming in as underdogs, you have to have that mentality. I understand being motivated after Belgium, even though Canada did lose that game. Had they been coming off of a 3-0 victory coming against Croatia, you can boast a little bit, you can brag, but not after a loss. And then obviously that 4-1 was not great. again, historic game in that, Alphonso Davies, beyond the fastest goal of the tournament, he scored at the first ever Men's World Cup. Amazing, but otherwise embarrassing performance. And they also squandered their potential. This is not the same team we saw at CONCACAF qualifiers.
Yeah.
Changed strategy, changed potential. Sad to see, really.
Yeah, I mean, the whole John Herdman thing is like, that's something you say inside the locker room with no cameras around. Like, it's okay to say to your team, but you got to know when to say it. Like, obviously, I'm sure his whole reasoning behind all of that was to pump up his team, say, great job. You guys played phenomenally against Belgium,
but they didn't win. But they played great, but they didn't win.
Yeah, but I think what his whole purpose behind it was like, listen, like, you didn't win, but this is a team that can do big things, and trying to motivate the team, keep the spirits high after a disappointing result. After they, as we said, they got robbed in that game. One touch off of Michy Batshuayi, and the game is they don't get any points out of it. Again, we talked about this. They need to finish all that. But yeah, I can understand that, but you can't do it in front of the cameras. You can't do it where there's microphones. You can't do it where there's people that can hear you, because it's only going to motivate the other team even more. And I think, Croatia, didn't need to come in motivated to begin with, because obviously they needed all 3 points, but to give that extra motivation is obviously an unfortunate, something you don't want to do, especially against a team, like you said, that's superior. And who knows what this team looks like in a few years. Obviously, they'll still have Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David and a lot of their core players, but there are some older players that are going to be out on the other end. So, this was a big opportunity for them, and they looked like they could get some points from this, but unfortunately have not grabbed any yet. Still have Morocco.
I think it was unfortunate to see the strategy change as the World Cup progressed. I think when they were coming into it, they understood their position as an underdog, which was great to see. In every press conference, you had each player boasting about the brotherhood and the ability to work with one another in order to progress. And that message really transcended during the Belgium game. But that switch afterwards to we're coming to get you and we're aggressive and offensive, and it doesn't really work when you're a Canada team that has so much to prove, I think. And I don't condone that type of language, because I do think it just gives the other team more motivation. But if you're a Brazil, if you're a Germany, a France, you kind of have some leeway to say that. You have the ability to boast. Canada, not one of them. So while I have my opinions on whether they are eliminated embarrassingly, I would love to hear if you think this is a good way to exit the tournament.
Yeah, so I think what we have to look at here too, right, is like how we talk about how Canada came out against Belgium and kind of like dominated things, and how they were able to take advantage of Belgium. And obviously Belgium have a bunch of slow center backs, and they play a similar system to Canada, and having those two midfielders with, basically the same setup, according to FootMob at least, that as Belgium did. But when you go back and you look at the Croatia game, I believe Croatia, and I'm looking at it right now, Croatia sets up with 3 in the midfield. So you're going to have to play differently with that, because you're going to combat in the way Canada did it. They went with 4-4-2 with Kyle Larin up top. That's great, but you're still leaving yourself exposed with just those 2 midfielders, and you're going to get overrun if you're, especially going against, Brozovic, Modric, and Kovacic.
Yeah.
Like, those are 3 of the best players in the world, like have been at one point or another 3 of the most talented players in the world. So you're right. I think that you have to adapt to each team you're playing. And it felt like they saw what happened in Belgium, and they were like, oh, we can go and dominate these teams. And you just can't do that. You have to adapt to the team that you're playing. And I think that's where John Herdman got it wrong. Is it embarrassing the way they went out? Yes. I don't know. I don't know, because I would argue that they played probably close to 3 halves out of 4 of like decent or good football. But
but it's not even about what happens on the pitch as well. I think you also have to take into consideration the messaging. They played well against Belgium. They could have ended on a high note there. Entered the Croatia match saying, we respect them. They're great. We're going to try and do the best that we can, but they are also great. Lose 4-1 and be like, well, we made a historic run, first World Cup in 36 years, first ever goal at a men's World Cup. It was amazing. Sad to lose against a great rival. But now the messaging is they really came back from saying, we're going to fuck Croatia. So
yeah, I mean, you're right.
The narrative behind it. I think it's
because
much more the narrative behind Canada at Qatar is embarrassing.
Yeah, you can't say we're going to go F somebody up and then lose by 3 goals. You
That's embarrassing.
That. And, the start was great. You go up 1 goal, but like everybody in the world, like.
But who's going to remember that?
Exactly. And no one.
In 2, 3, 4 years, people are going to remember Herdman saying that and Croatia responding with a 4-1.
Yeah.
So they've been eliminated, but.
They have one more game. Who knows what's going to happen?
Eliminated.
I mean, Morocco needs something out of the game. Canada doesn't. And Morocco just beat Belgium.
They're a great team. I think
they're
it'll be an interesting game, but
I think they're very solid defensively. Team. So I mean, I can't see any way where Morocco loses to Canada. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Canada gets shut out again.
Yeah, to which then they would exit the tournament with 0 points.
And in a second straight
fact.
Yeah, in a second
straight. Yeah, in a second straight World Cup.
But again, like you said, if they go in there with the same mindset every game and like, listen, we're here, we're going to try and compete, we're going to do our best to compete, but we understand that we're not,
they're past that.
Exactly. But if you do that, and 90-min football, posting here, this is the quote from the one of the Croatian players. I want to thank the Canada coach for the motivation. In the end, Croatia demonstrated who effed whom. And really,
and they're not wrong.
Right
and
right there.
I want to bring up 2014 again because it was the exact same situation with Mexico. They mentioned a lot of things about Ochoa, and whenever he made like an amazing stop, he would just come out and go like this. Or when Andres Guardado scored, he pointed to the camera, showed his legs, and said, "My legs aren't trembling." So it truly, you can't give those teams extra motivation. You can't give them something to work with. And Canada messed up, and they did that. But they've since been eliminated, and we have 3 other nations to discuss that are still in the fight.
Somehow there's 3 other nations that are still in the fight, and one of them is not Canada.
One of them is not Canada, which is also important to note that the narrative going into this tournament was how Canada was superior, how Canada had been doing a great job. And Herdman did, but his inexperience at a men's World Cup showed during the trajectory of the tournament. But anyway, we move on.
Onwards and upwards.
Yeah, sure.
I'm sorry, Canadian fans.
You'll be fine.
You'll be okay.
Congratulations.
Come on, let's be honest.
Well, they qualified to the next one, so that's fine.
Exactly. How many of them?
They'll be fine.
How many of them? Alfonso Davies breakout star. He did have a goal. But yeah, I mean, let's be honest. If you're a Canadian fan and you're thinking realistically about this, there's no way, as I said on the broadcast before this, that you should have expected to come into this and gotten out of here.
Yeah.
At any point.
Absolutely.
You expected to get eliminated, so.
Not like this, but absolutely.
Yeah.
And we move on to Mexico, which was a very difficult game for me to watch.
I can't imagine it was fun at all.
The first half was. I will give it to them. The first half was amazing to watch, but I have my thoughts. Would love to hear yours.
Yeah, I mean, the first half was, I think, so this is what my opinion on the whole game as a whole. I think that Mexico played well defensively. And I think overall, I mean, what are you going to do about like those 2 goals? Like those are great goals. Like there's not much you can do about those goals. Like those are just pure skill. That's what happens when you can't capitalize offensively and the other team has a player called Leo Messi. Like that's what happens. So defensively, I didn't think they were bad FotMob thinks otherwise because everybody on their team is in the mid sixes or low sixes, which I think is a little unfair. I think that's probably a product of giving up 2 goals. I think that's where that comes from. But in fairness, I think that the Mexican defense actually played well. What I don't what I think about going forward, I think they lacked much going forward. And I think that Tata got it wrong because I understand
with the substitutions.
I just think he got it wrong from the start because, like, I understand that
I don't think he got it wrong from the start. I think that first half, had we had a healthy Raul Jimenez,
well, yeah, that's what. Yeah, well, I guess he didn't get it wrong, but
or the thing is, I think you have to take into consideration everything that happens off the pitch. But that first half was phenomenal in the way that Mexico held up. They managed well defensively. I think we have to give a huge shout out to Hector Moreno, Cesar Montes, even Kevin Alvarez, who had his World Cup debut. It was similar to the way Andres Guardado debuted against Argentina, I believe 2006. Yeah. So you have to give him that. He gave a great game. The back line was definitely interesting. Unfortunately, I think Mexico gave a good half. My concern, and I said it from the beginning, my concern with Alexis Vega is that he doesn't have the stamina to go beyond 55 to 60 minutes. He gave a great attempt. He almost scored off of a set piece. That was great, but Mexico's failure to capitalize on any offensive opportunity in the first half came to haunt them in the second. And yeah, if you give space to Lionel Messi, he's going to score. And I think the reason I don't want to say calm, but the reason I was somewhat okay after the game was because this was technically our designated loss.
Yeah.
And I truly do believe in the Mexican side. I think individually you have great talent that needs to be developed and needs to continue developing. Just Chucky Lozano needs to keep going. Alexis Vega has to make the move to Europe. Luis Chavez moved to Europe. Just a couple players, but Argentina individually has such great talent. And when you dissect these 2 goals, it's not an embarrassing performance off of Mexico. Those were just 2 great goals by 2 great figures.
Yeah, defensively, because I just think offensively they carried the ball, and I think Vega did well to push forward offensively a lot. Like, I think he in the first half, like, he got into some good spaces, pushed forward offensively, created some things, but there wasn't, other than his free kick and the header, I think that was in the 10th minute or whatever.
Yeah.
That went wide. Like, there weren't many, and this is the problem with Mexico, right? That we talked about. It's like they need to figure out how they're going to score a goal. Like this is 2 games in a row where they've failed to capitalize on anything offensively. And I think that they just looked, and again, this is what happens when you play 5 at the back. Obviously there wasn't going to be many, like the expectation coming in playing 5 at the back was that, okay, like, we're going to play a defensive game and hit them on the counterattack. The problem is the two of the players that they had in the midfield 3 were Andres Guardado and Hector Herrera, who I think going forward and being able to transition from offense to defense, it's just going to be so much slower. And so,
well, yeah, because it's 2 of the oldest figures.
Yes.
I do think the rhythm changed drastically when Andres Guardado came off with an injury and Eric Gutierrez came into the match.
Yeah.
That was a breath of fresh air. I do think in the first half, they did a great job at shutting down Argentina's creativity and blocking Lionel Messi from doing absolutely anything interesting inside the box. Now, mind you, Mexico would have been fine with a 0-0 draw, like perfectly fine. It was Argentina who would be struggling with that result. Now, obviously, we know that wasn't the case and they won. They still haven't qualified for the round of 16.
Yeah.
Anything can happen in Group C, and we'll go over the situations that either team has to go through a little bit later. But I don't think it was a bad game. I think Mexico's offensive, lack of offensive opportunities showed more and more.
Look at it. Just if you look at the stats as pure stats, right? Like, Argentina only had 5 shots, and the only 2 shots they put on goal went in. Mexico had 4 shots, they put 1 on goal. Like, there wasn't defensively. They didn't do anything wrong defensively. I don't think. Like, I think they were played fine defensively.
Defensively it was fine, but we knew going into it. Like, the thing is, we have to also understand Gerardo Martino specializes in strengthening the back line and defense of any team he arrives to. So it's not a surprise to us, also knowing the duo that Hector Moreno and Cesar Montes have, that Mexico is strong defensively. That would never be our issue, and we knew that going into it. Where I think Tata Martino got it wrong, though, and there was obviously a lot of criticism coming into it just because he's Argentinian, so you had just a lot of criticism coming his way. But he had a plan A that worked in the first half, and he had no plan B. So when players ran out of steam, the substitutions kind of made just all the difference. And you could tell the depth that Argentina has when players came in, whereas Mexico opted for other figures. Now, he did include Uriel Antuna, who I think individually has great talent, and Piojo Alvarado, who I've said was a good addition considering how he's used under Tata Martino. But two of them are supplemental players, and you had both of them up top at the same time. They are great as supporting figures to Alexis Vega or Chucky Lozano. They aren't there. They won't create anything offensively by themselves, or even as a duo. We never saw that during the qualifiers or the years leading up to the tournament. Uriel Antuna and Piojo Alvarado never played alone together up top. Why do you have them there now? Why would you take Chucky Lozano out? And he did explain that after the first goal, Chucky mentioned that he wasn't at his peak fitness-wise. I don't know. I think there's so many things going on behind the scenes. I think you could have kept pushing, but
it's so hard, right? Because it's like, you're right. When you say what you said before, like a healthy Raul Jimenez changes this game completely, in my personal opinion, because I know we talk about this, and Lisandro Martinez, like, I think he's one of the center backs, right? Yeah, for the Man United player. Great player, but he is only 5'9", and with a physical player like Raul Jimenez, at least putting him out there and having him go up against that is at least going to be helpful, obviously, when he's healthy. So that's the unfortunate part about it.
I mean, again, I personally would have probably put in Funes Mori instead of Raul Jimenez, but I do think
later in the game.
In the second half, but I think Tata Martino let the criticisms get to him and all the outcry that would have been, again, so much ridiculous outcry, but Rogelio Funes Mori was born in Argentina, left the country when he was 10, plays in Mexico, naturalized Mexican citizen in obviously the Mexican national team, and has not been given a chance to play this tournament. Would have been his moment because he fits under Tata Martino's associative number 9 style of play. He was not given the chance. He chose instead to go with Raul Jimenez, who we know is not fit. I think after that second goal, Funes Mori would have been at least a little bit more helpful, because we've seen Raul Jimenez already this tournament not be that difference maker. So
and a couple times he found himself in those wide areas, and that's not really where you want him to be. That's where you would want that's where you would want a Chucky Lozano or a Alexis Vega in those areas. And fun fact, Funes Mori has a brother who played for Everton, Ramiro Funes Mori.
Yeah, that's why they call him Los Mellizos, the twins.
Ramiro Funes Mori is like basically a red card waiting to happen, but that's a different story.
Oh yeah, he's in Liga MX right now, very criticized. He was also dealing with an injury.
I love him so much. No, he's just so funny to watch. Very mixed feelings
over there in Mexico.
But I think you're right. I mean, it's like, it's hard when you don't have a healthy Raul Jimenez. That changes things. I mean, we can go back to Santi Jimenez. Should he?
No, we will not. We won't go there.
That situation.
Congratulations, he just got engaged. I think the substitutions went wrong. I don't think Mexico gave a bad first half. I
don't think so.
To some extent, gave me hope, and I'm sure a lot of Mexicans as well. But that
let's talk about the let's talk about the scenarios, because in my personal opinion, I think Mexico is still in a very good position.
I think they're in a very difficult position. So in order for Mexico not to have to worry about any other team, they must win 4-0 against Saudi Arabia. And
oh, really? Wait. Oh, I didn't know
in
that.
another time, that wouldn't have been a crazy ideal, but given the fact that Mexico lacks offensive power and have failed to score so far this tournament, it's a real concern.
For them not to have to worry about another team. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess
now, I believe if they win 2-0 and Argentina beats Poland by 2 or 3 goals, then Mexico would advance. And if they win by 1-0, then it becomes truly, I think the star of the Group C will be goal difference.
Yeah, so I think, at least from what I understand, I think that after goal difference, it goes to goals scored. So if Argentina won 2-0 and Mexico won 2-0, I don't know what the next tiebreaker is, because then Poland and them would both have 2 goals scored and 2 goals against, and they both have 0 goal differential. So really, as a neutral in this situation, really hoping for that, because I think that's really fun. But as a person who cares about your feelings, Lizzy, I really don't want that to happen for you.
I mean, here's the thing. There's been conversations going on about whether Mexico's appearance so far, or should we stay in the group stage, would be a failure. I said since the day we drew in Group C that this was going to be a very difficult year, that our roster has had issues, injuries, a million different things, and we can argue that Tecatito's presence during that Argentina game would have been a huge change maker, but of course he's injured, went through surgery, so he's not at the World Cup. But I think they've undergone certain circumstances that makes it understandable why they would not qualify for the round of 16 in this tournament. And it's not the expectations I want to have for Mexico moving forward. And I do for 2026 want to see this generational change, new figures, fresh faces. But this year was difficult. We cannot ignore that Lewandowski is with Poland and that Messi is with Argentina. And obviously that shakeup between Argentina and Saudi Arabia messed up everyone's plans.
Yes.
But it was a difficult group to begin with. It was a difficult year to begin with. And I won't go into what this tournament has caused for teams, because it hasn't been exclusive to Mexico going into it with just days of rest and overworking and everything to that extent, because everyone's playing on that term. But I think it would be acceptable to see Mexico stay in the group stage. Disappointing in that obviously I want to see them continue in this tournament. Yes. But given the situation, I don't think it's a crazy thing to say that it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my only disagreement or argument would be that, you look, hindsight's 2020, right? So when you look at the Poland game, that's a game that I think Mexico should have gotten more than a point out of. I think they probably should have found a way. So hindsight's 2020, and you look at it and you're like, oh man, if we got points there. Well, but if you see
the tragectory of the game, yes, in the beginning, but then we saved a penalty. So
well, yeah. I mean, obviously
Poland could say the same thing.
Yeah, all that, of course, all that included went up. But I do feel like Mexico could have had a handle on that game. Obviously, the Argentina game was always going to be tough to win. That was never going to be an easy game. And then now seeing how Saudi Arabia has kind of responded in certain ways, and kind of, obviously they didn't have a great game against Poland, but they're, I think, a tougher opponent than people expected them to be. You don't want to have to go into that game with Saudi Arabia needing points to get out of the group. Like, you would rather them be already eliminated. And obviously it makes it more difficult for you guys having to win by a certain amount of goals. So yeah, I mean, I agree that, listen, it's tough to get out. If you look at these groups across the table, right, it's not just exclusive to Mexico, the United States, Canada, whatever. I mean, this is the World Cup, teams are going to perform.
There are groups that I would say are
easier
to navigate through. I mean, you have 2 Ballon d'Or nominees, one historic winner there in our group, and one nominee who.
No, I agree. I'm just saying, it's just not
here nor there.
it's not, I don't think it's, I think this World Cup has been an interesting one in that a lot of these teams that nobody expected to be good or expected to have a play a role in this tournament are all of a sudden playing a role. Like we just looked, I think they just showed a graphic on the FIFA World Cup today before the Brazil game that the African nations are performing extremely well at this World Cup. So that throws a whole nother wrench into it with the Tunisias, the Moroccos, Ghana, so for all these different, it's been, I think, a very unexpected World Cup in a lot of ways, which makes it even harder. So I agree with you. I think that, it's not entirely terrible that the Mexico falls out in the way things have gone leading up to the World Cup and how they've gone at this World Cup. So there is a question for Lizzy. Bigger setback for Mexico, the tie versus Poland or Saudi Arabia's win over Argentina? What do you think hurt you guys more?
I think the Saudi Arabia win over Argentina. If conversations we had prior to the tournament said if we find a result against Poland, lose against Argentina, and win against Saudi Arabia, we're through with 4 points. So Argentina versus Mexico was a game that, we always intended to win, but kind of had that like guaranteed loss. We would be okay with that loss. The win shook up the entire group. It changed the trajectory for everyone, not only Mexico, but Poland and Argentina and Saudi Arabia. Yeah. So it complicated things a lot. I think that was completely circumstantial. Argentina had a couple disallowed goals and their defense isn't great, but I truly think that's more of a setback. I don't think we gave a bad game against Poland. I think that 0-0, considering the situation and what happened on that pitch, was a decent performance. Yes, we could have done more in the first half, as we've said in the same way with Argentina. We could have done more in that first half, but performed well. I think as opposed to Canada, I'm not embarrassed by the loss we had against Argentina. They were 2 great goals. It wasn't a complete massacre, but it all comes down to that last game. We definitely need to win. And even if we don't get past the group stage, I think we still need to win against Saudi Arabia to save face in that sense. We cannot walk away without a goal, and we cannot walk away without a victory. That would be the embarrassing part.
I would fully expect Tata to not be on the plane home if they lose to Saudi Arabia or tie. Like, you have to beat them. Like, he's gone either way, but I mean.
He's gone either way. There's no chance that he stays through a day more than.
Like, I would fire him like 30 minutes afterwards if that was the case.
And I mean, we've had this conversation. There was 2 resignation letters that were not accepted by the Mexican Federation prior to the World Cup. But I do want to say it's not exclusive to Tata Martino. It's extremely rare. I don't believe in recent history that a head coach has stayed past the World Cup with Mexico. There's some that haven't even made it to the World Cup with Mexico. So,
very good point.
Definitely not exclusive. Definitely not something we expect to see.
Yeah. All right.
But we're qualified to 2026 anyway, so congrats.
There. Yeah, we're going to have to talk through this on this podcast at some point because I have no idea. Like, what are we going to do for the next 4 years? Like, what does CONCACAF qualifying do? Like,
I honestly think that's the best scenario for Mexico. I think
me too. But it's just like weird. It's like, oh man, Canada, US, and Mexico finished at the top of the group. I guess it's going to be the next 4 teams from CONCACAF. They're going to make because
because we're hosts.
Yeah, I know, but it's just a weird thing. Like,
it's definitely weird. I think it's the best thing for Mexico, who need a generational change and need time away from the spotlight. There's so much pressure for Mexico that comes with the CONCACAF qualifiers that sometimes even make or break a head coach or a team. So the ability to step away from any major tournament for 4 years, and I don't want to say Nations League or Gold Cup or the possibility of CONMEBOL. I think not having the pressure of CONCACAF qualifiers gives Mexico the ability to test out new players, new figures, new faces, try a new system. I personally, and we will make a whole other edition of this podcast, but I would love to see Jimmy Lozano come in and do the same exact thing that he did with the Olympic team, which won bronze at the Olympics. And he formed an amazing group, and you have Henry Martin, Piojo Alvarado, Alexis Vega, and they've come so strong together from that team and something that Jimmy Lozano created. But it'll be the best for Mexico. But here and now, we have also the United States in the same situation. They must win against Iran. Anything other than a victory would see the team eliminated. How are you feeling?
I mean, if you had told me that we would have to beat Iran in the third game to advance, I would have taken that 10 times out of 10. Like, why would you not take that? Why would you? I mean, obviously, I would like to beat Wales and England, but being realistic, I think if you can get we got to the third game and we don't have to worry about anybody else. We don't have to worry about anything else. All we have to do is go in there and beat Iran. And that's obviously barring the fact that you would love to get a win against Wales. You'd love to get a win against England. Like, barring those things, like, I think you're in a position that you expected to be in. I think you expected to tie. Like, I didn't expect to win again going into the game. We talked about going into the game. Going into these games, didn't expect to beat Wales. I expected to tie Wales. I didn't expect to beat England. I honestly wasn't even sure we were going to tie England. I was like, let's just keep it close. So you get
England
the extra
gave
point
a
there.
really bad game.
Well, when you have a team like the U.S. men's national team, it's hard to really play very well against us,
Okay. Well, all right then.
No, but yes, I think
interesting point.
Yeah, I think I honestly, again, I don't feel like I don't love having to get a win against Iran. I would love to be in there already. I would love to be already qualified. But the reality of it was that was never going to be the case. So I'll take everything I can get to not have to worry about goal differential or goals scored or anything like that. I'd rather just
don't brag.
No, I know, but I'm just saying I'm cool with saying, like, whether we win 1-0 or 3-0, we're still through. It's like that. You don't have to worry about those other things.
But going back to the England-US game, I think there was a lot of hype. Soccer, football, the Revolutionary War. There's so many
the Revolutionary War did happen for all the English watching the show. It did happen.
So many conversations to be had about that game. Prior to talking about what actually happened, I think we need to go over the starting 11. I was, again, interested to see no Gio Reyna, no Jesus Ferreira.
I didn't think we were going to see Jesus
definitely.
Ferreira. I really
You
didn't.
don't think?
I knew he was going to make a change up top, and I knew it was going to be Hadji Wright because I knew going into the game, I think he expected our best chances are going to be on set pieces and corners, and it's just another big body to throw into the middle of that England defense. Like,
but talking about number 9s, I think it's very interesting, and this is where we go into his ability to say and speak and whatever. But Greg Berhalter mentioned the physicality of the championship over the Eredivisie for the reason of bringing on Josh Sargent over Ricardo Pepi. Now, he also complimented the championship in saying that it's the closest thing to the Premier League, and you're constantly playing against Premier League figures. Okay, well, the game against England was that chance to play against Premier League figures, and you don't start Josh Sargent? The reason you literally brought him on, beyond him having a great club career at the moment, that's the reason he previously said he was bringing him on for.
I know. I understand. But at this point, we understand Greg. We know he doesn't do things that are... We don't
understand Greg.
Like, but that's what I'm saying. Like, we know he's just going to be everything about him is going to be weird. Like, everything about it, like, to expect something, like, weird in the starting lineup. And there was something about it. I don't know why. I was just like, in my head, I was like, there's no shot he doesn't start Hadji Wright in this game. And he started Hadji Wright.
I'm not saying it was a bad choice. I'm just saying it's difficult for players to understand what they need to do in order to be on a coach's good side. And I do think it's important to point out that he's absolutely losing control of his locker room. There's no motivation from the players, and you've seen all the press conferences, everything coming out of that camp.
I don't know.
The fight with Gio Reyna. Well, there's between the coach and players. A coach can't keep motivating a player saying, this is what you need to do to earn a spot in the starting 11. Do it, and then not earn a spot in the starting 11. There's always going to be competition, but if there's no set of rules or guidelines that you're going to stick to, it makes it a free-for-all, and it makes it difficult.
I understand. I just think when you're playing, I don't know, like in my mind and the way I think of it, it's just like you got to play to the team you're going to play. But I understand what you're saying. If you're going to tell Josh Sargent you're making the team because the championship is more physical, that's.
I think in general, like not even just the Josh Sargent situation. I think
The
players inside the camp now, like not including Gio Reyna, and then he entered the game in like the 85th minute. There was truly nothing for him to do at that point. But
well, I do think that the Gio Reyna thing is weird. Like, just put him on the 65th minute in a game that you're in control of. Like, he can easily make a difference. Like, I thought he made the right subs just at the wrong times. Like, as soon as they brought on Jordan Henderson and I think was it Henderson and Rashford at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, Henderson and Grealish, I think it was at the same time. As soon as they brought in those two players, they put him on the left side, and guess who's on that side defending? Serginho Dest and Weston McKennie, both injured. Greg should have looked at his bench and said,
who are on previous yellow cards,
Shaq
by
Moore,
the way.
who are on previous yellow cards and were previously injured, should have said, hey, Shaq and Brendan, get up and you're in the game. Like, it shouldn't have been that hard. Well, you shouldn't have had to, like, there should have been no buying time there. You put those players on because you know exactly what's going to happen in that 5-10 minute span. England had their one wave of.
And that point as well, Brendan Aronson plays constantly in the Premier League, and he wasn't in that starting lineup either. Also important to mention, Haji Wright earned his 6th cap with the U.S. men's national team and 2nd ever start during that important game.
Love that.
Gio Reyna situation, it was on SiriusXM that I don't remember who said they believe there's a conflict between Gio Reyna and Greg Berhalter that's influencing his decision to play him during these games. Now, this wouldn't be the first time we're hearing a player saying a conflict with the coach is impacting his decisions. We know Matt Miazga, and I can go into him as well, but we know he came out prior to the announcement of the 26-man roster going to Qatar that he had a difference of opinion with Greg Berhalter, which left him out. And the reason he hadn't been called into camps, even if he's playing well. So now we obviously don't know the extent of the situation, but it's just interesting to see a pattern at this point, especially when it came to the difference of opinions and press conferences that Gio Reyna and Greg Berhalter had over the situation. Now, Greg Berhalter, we know, said Gio Reyna wasn't up to it physically. He wasn't at 100%, whereas Gio Reyna came out and said, I'm 100% physically fit and I'm able to play. So,
I mean, again, like you said, and I like as Greg likes to call it, the verticality of Tim Weah. I think it's hard to take him out after I think he played a decent game against Wales. You keep him in there, but I do think that Gio needs to come on earlier. I think Brendan needs to come on early. Like, these are players that can change a game for you. And this is where I think it becomes, because Brendan obviously can play on the wing. He can play. I mean, I think he typically plays in the wing for Leeds, Brendan Aronson. And that 3-man midfield, I don't know what everybody else thinks about it. I think that 3-man midfield is the starting 3-man midfield. McKennie, Adams, and Musa are a major part to unlocking the rest of the team. I think those 3 players together, when they're healthy and they're playing at the top of their game, are phenomenal. And some of I think they're just very, very good midfielders, and I think they can change a game. So it's hard to change that, and it's hard to put that in. But when it comes to the Gio situation, it's like this. I mean, this kid, if you're not going to start him, he's got to play more than 5 minutes for the game, because what's the point of having him on the roster? It's like almost annoying to have him on the roster because he's sitting on the bench and can change the game. And it's a good thing to have the depth and all that stuff and all the great stuff. But if you're only going to play him 5 minutes a game, or you're only going to bring him on in moments where, maybe they need to be a little bit more defensive, can't have as much of an impact on the game. Like, it's hard, and it's great to have these challenges, but like you said, can't have these conflicts with the coach. It's I don't know. I'm all over the place right now because it's a hard thing to break down, I think, because and I love it. I love the fact that I could say, oh man, why is Josh Sargent, Brendan Aronson, and Gio Reyna not playing more minutes? Like, that's great from a U.S. men's national team perspective if you look at years past. But at the same time, it can be frustrating because similar to England. Why is Phil Foden not on the field for 90 minutes in an England game? Like, that should never happen. So,
well, you mentioned the midfield, and while I agree that those three at a healthy and great moment can be difference makers, we know Weston McKennie isn't at his best right now. He kind of limped off the game against Wales. He's already on a yellow card. So while he was great, I think he had to come out earlier.
Yes, I do too.
Not start.
You could
given the fact that you have depth.
Yeah.
You have several different combinations there.
The 60th minute every time. You could see it. You can almost pinpoint it. That's when Weston starts to jog around the field, doesn't get back to his man. You could see it every time. Him and Dest, the same thing. So it's 60. Like, I don't know why coaches do this, because it is not just Greg. Coaches do this all the time. It's like, he's hurt. He's not able to give you 90 minutes. Like, why wait to make the change? Waiting
if he's
to make
your
the change
only option, I completely understand. This is where I think the United States has depth in that area. And with great options as well. So it becomes an issue. You
could even put Geno in that role if you wanted to.
I'm not convinced by Sergiño Dest this tournament at all. I think he's been shaky. I think he's been nervous on the ball, making the wrong calls, sometimes overly aggressive, led to a yellow card. I just have not been convinced. I don't think the rest of Europe has been either, because he's not a starting figure. But I also want to point out the U.S. men's national team did have great chances. There was Pulisic's crossbar and Weston McKennie that missed in the 25th minute. But I do think in that first half, just like I said with Mexico, the game was for the taking, and the United States did not know how to manage that at all. Greg Berhalter did not know what to do with substitutes, which led, and I maintain, inexperience of the situation is going to cost the United States their place in the round of 16. I would love to see them through more content for us on this podcast and 90 Min US. Would love to see them go through the tournament, but I do think it'll be the inexperience that costs them their place.
We have some controversy in the comments. Edwin believes that Weston was awesome, which I do think. I mean, yes, I think their lack of coaching. I do agree that their lack of coaching and the coaching system. We've talked about this multiple times. It's not
There's no system
conducive to helping these guys succeed. I do think Weston had a great game up until that point where he started to slow down. Yeah,
I don't think they've overachieved. They haven't.
We
have to also remember the United States has not won at the World Cup. No matter, and I maintain the same level of demand with Mexico as well. And I said the same thing with Canada. Though they've all had great halves and great moments and great chances on the ball, the United States has still not won a game.
Yeah,
so
but
there's no overachieving, because with this new generation and this new faces and so much developed talent, you have figures in Europe. You have some of the best teams.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
There's no victory.
I understand what you're saying, but I think at the same time, like, we talk about inexperience, where it's to be expected. This is the third youngest team at the World Cup. They're going to make mistakes, and they're going. I just think if you look at this team, who has 25 players who have never played at a World Cup before.
Yeah.
You look at how they're performing against a quality England team. Like, this team is the team that beat Iran 6-2 on Monday, and how they played in the first half. Like, I would argue that the U.S. men's national team has had 3 very, very good halves. And the only bad half was the second half against Wales. But I don't find that as an issue, because if you go in, like I said, as I was going in, hindsight's 20/20, right? So, like, obviously you look at it and you're like, I'm like, I feel like they could have had 6 points at this point. But if you look at it beforehand, I think the way the United States was playing leading up to the tournament and how they've performed at this tournament, I think that they've, at least for me personally, have surpassed my expectations in terms of, I didn't think that I thought they were going to have a lot of trouble in these first 2 games. And they dominated a lot of these games. And I honestly, that's the first time I think you could say that about the United States men's national team against a European opponent like England in a very, very long time. Like, even if you look back to 2010 in the World Cup, they didn't dominate that game. They scored in the first minute and then just played defense.
One.
Yes, no, exactly. Like
I love that.
Like, I don't know. It's just, it seems like they're playing very well. And obviously they don't have the goal, and that's going to be the thing that's going to make or break them, like Mexico in that final third game.
I don't think very well, though.
I
They
don't know.
cost their own game on the first, against Wales.
Yeah, but if you take that one defensive
Walker Zimmerman lost the game for the United States.
No, I know, but I think
they also dug their own grave.
But I don't know. I just think if you take out that one thing, I think the U.S. men's national team, in my personal opinion, the U.S. men's national team has looked the best out of any CONCACAF team in the World Cup.
I think my question is, are they playing well, or are the expectations extremely low?
I mean, maybe that's the case. But I think maybe it's the case that the expectations are really low, and that's fine with me. If the expectations are low, the expectations are low. But would you say that Mexico is playing really well at this World Cup, and their expectations?
We're making it a you against I situation.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is Mexico also has low expectations, right? So
no, well, that's the thing. Mexico has unrealistically high expectations.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
I mean, it's the Mexican fan base is almost demanding that fifth game. And when we remember who makes it into that fifth game, it's the top 8 nations of the world, whereas Mexico should be realistically ranked between 10 and 12.
Yeah.
So the fact that consistent, and I don't want to bring this World Cup up, but consistently we make it to the round of 16 where we belong. We're in the top 16 of the world. But the expectations are always higher and better. And if we win, it's because we needed to. And if we lose, it's because we're the worst. So, I mean, going way beyond, the expectations for Mexico are realistically high. A lot of people said we had to win against Argentina, which
I guess my mindset on Mexico.
My
mindset on Mexico is how you look at them. So I obviously don't.
Oh well, I'm an anomaly when it comes to them.
So that's why I think of it like that. It's because you came into it with a realistic expectation where you're like, okay, listen, this team is not performing at the quality that they should be or that they normally do. But I don't know. Maybe it's that the expectations are very, very low for the United States. It's something I'm okay with because personally, one of the biggest things for me at these World Cups is this is the one time where, in the U.S. at least, this is an opportunity to gain fans, right? This is an opportunity. Every single person who doesn't watch soccer, all they hear is, oh, this is the golden generation, blah, blah, blah. And if they come out and they look like crap, then you lose. That's it. Those guys are gone. So at least they're performing and putting on a performance that people watch. Like my buddy who came with me the other day, we went to go to New York City to watch the soccer game, watch U.S. play England. We were in the bar or whatever. He left it. He said, wow, that was an awesome experience. I really loved that. I was really surprised by the way that I enjoyed that. And I think from my perspective, again, I don't know how it is for you, Lizzy, because obviously I think you're surrounded more by people who enjoy the sport of soccer. All my friends are very, very casual soccer fans. They watch it when it's the World Cup. My buddy watches Bayern Munich every now and then, and that's it. From my perspective, for me, it's only this World Cup at least is about building up that soccer fan base even more to hopefully grow the MLS even more, as we'll talk about in I'm sure episodes to come, to the point where in 2026, soccer is a bigger sport in the country. And I think that the United States men's national team in the first 2 games here have at least allowed for that to happen. And that's why I guess I'm excited about it because, and again, they could ruin it all by going and losing to Iran. So
Mexico could do the same thing. So maybe we're talking too early, but we're going to continue doing so anyway. Last but not least, we have to talk about Costa Rica, who we don't give enough love to.
We do not. You know what? Maybe they have had the best World Cup out of any team because they won. They're the only CONCACAF team that's won.
Yeah. But they also lost 7-0. So really, it's
how do you really judge it? I mean, who knows? I don't know.
Yes,
what's up with Japan?
They did win.
Man? Japan's up and down. They beat us 2-0. They lose to Canada 2-1 before the World Cup. Then they go and beat Germany 2-1, and then they go to lose to Costa Rica 1-0. All over
I know.
the place,
I mean, Costa Rica does have the ability to make it to the round of 16, as the standings are at the moment. Group E has Spain up top, then Japan with 3 points, Costa Rica with 3 points, and then Germany with one, which is, I guess, the embarrassing situation.
2 World Cups in a row. Imagine that.
Well,
Like,
then
we really
if the
shouldn't be
United
complaining if Germany's missing 2 World Cup knockout stages in a row. I mean, what
Well,
are
that's
they
what I'm
doing
saying.
over
I think
there?
if the United States and Mexico both stay in the group stage, then so does Germany and potentially also Argentina.
Yeah.
So we're in good company, I guess.
Yeah, right? It's like, I mean, I
Yeah,
guess,
upside
right?
down World Cup. But yes, so they do have the ability to make it out. Then
Costa Rica does too. Costa Rica does too, which is, I mean, hey, I mean, if you're a Costa Rica fan after that 7-0 loss, like, this is all you could have
came
asked
back.
for. You're gonna,
Yeah, you
I
came
mean,
back. So it'll really be between Germany and Costa Rica. They face each other on Tuesday, I believe, or
and
no, on Thursday. They face each other on Thursday, which will be
Yes.
a deciding factor for that group. It's really open for most groups anyway, which makes things extremely interesting. I believe France are one of the only nations to be qualified already,
and
which we
Brazil,
knew
I
would
think, just
happen.
qualified too because they just won today
As
so.
well, yeah. Which we knew would happen, but
Yeah, I mean,
definitely interesting.
Talk about
A
easy
lot of
groups. Brazil should walk through this group. Like, this should be like they should be fine.
Should is the key word here.
Yes.
A weird World Cup so far, ups and downs, many things to happen, but the U.S. men's national team and Mexico and Costa Rica have their fate in their hands, essentially. Mexico, not so much.
A little bit,
but
kind of.
a little bit, but kind of.
Fingers crossed.
We'll be back. Yes, of course, as always. We'll be back to recap all that action, potentially sad, potentially crying. Happy tears, sad tears. We'll see. But
Let's hope for all happy tears. All happy tears. Let's make it a happy podcast.
Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter for more content. We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Bye.